Okay, so if you want to see the mainstream media continue to make the same mistake over and over and over again, look no further. Their coverage of the Boulder terror attack will leave you feeling disgusted. They not only attempt to skew the narrative, but they attack the FBI in the same sentence. It's ludicrous.
Well, I mean, this is horrific. And what more do we need to see, Jake, before we realize this Free Palestine movement is nothing more than a domestic terror organization right now? I mean, we had the killings in Washington a couple of weeks ago. We have this issue in Colorado. We've seen, the activities on college campuses now for months and months and months and months. The rise of anti-Semitism in America, the rise in the number of people who have come to America who hold anti-American views, anti-Western views, and anti-Semitic views and are now willing to act on it. It is absolutely outrageous. And I think as a society, we need to understand we are dealing with domestic terrorism. It's growing more violent by the day. And if we don't deal with it, these kinds of things are going to keep happening in cities all over the place. It's awful. And we need to come to grips with the fight that we're in right now in America, a fight for the future of our country and the future of Western civilization, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that was Scott Jennings. We are 24 hours removed from that terror attack that took place in Boulder, Colorado. And all the reactions have been rolling in, of course. And so there's a couple of them that I want to highlight that continues to show what the problem is behind an attack like this. Number one, there is a huge disconnect between federal authorities and local law enforcement, especially in blue states. And an example of that we saw yesterday when the police chief of Boulder refused to call this a terror attack, and the FBI did. There's a disconnect there. And secondly, Democrats continue to allow this whole Free Palestine movement to turn violent, just like they allowed violence to occur against Elon Musk and Tesla. Now, let me just show you an example of how delusional Democrats can be. Here's Jamie Raskin, congressman, saying this.
We've got to take whatever precautions and security measures we need to make sure that people can do that. That's essential. But there's been a lot of violence in our society recently, as we saw in Washington. Now we're seeing in Colorado, but we've seen it across the country. We are still in the midst of a gun violence epidemic. So we need to be acting with due concern for human life. I mean, this is why, of course, we have been fighting for a universal violent criminal background check. We are for a ban on military-style assault weapons in the country. Our lax gun laws are a danger to everybody in America, and that's something that we can act with some legislative determination to turn around.
All right, so before we even respond to that nonsense, please, if you guys have been getting value from our channel, like, share, and subscribe. If you want to support us further, you can go to the link in the description below, buy us a cup of coffee, shop our merch store, or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Okay, so maybe I missed it, but I don't see how gun legislation has anything to do with this terror attack, okay? I guess it's a great example of how the congressman has no idea what he's talking about. And again, trying to score political points here. Let me just show you a clip here from the officials on the ground there. They held a press conference earlier today, releasing additional details about this criminal. Just listen to this, and then we'll come back and react to Mr. Jamie Raskin there.
Mr. Solomon stated that he had been planning this attack for a year. And he acted because he hated what he called the Zionist group. But what the charges allege that he did was to throw Molotov cocktails at a group of men and women, some of them in their late 80s, burning them as they peacefully walked on a Sunday to draw attention to Israeli hostages held in Gaza. And when he was interviewed about the attack, he said he wanted them all to die. He had no regrets, and he would go back and do it again. He said that he had previously tried to purchase a firearm, but resorted to the Molotov cocktails when he could not purchase a gun because he was not a legal citizen.
All right, so here's what you guys need to know. The left clearly is trying to minimize this because they know this is another example of violence coming from their party, the way that they talk, these movements that they have within the party, like Free Palestine. And what they're doing is they're minimizing it by trying to bring up January 6th. I'm going to show you another example of that here shortly. Number two, this highlights the weakness of the party as well when it comes to policy, immigration. This guy's a foreign national, overstayed his visa, and is looking to destroy the United States of America and planned this for a year. And number three, even though Jamie Raskin wants to bring up gun control, you heard what the official said. The guy attempted to get a gun, wasn't allowed to because he was not an American citizen. So again, what does gun legislation have to do with this? I have no idea. All right, now let me show you this next clip from book salesman Jake Tapper when he starts rambling about violent right-wing anti-Semitism in response to this terror attack. Take a look.
Anti-Semitism obviously is a big problem on the left, and we've seen that in these violent attacks in recent months. Governor Shapiro's house, the attack and murders outside the Jewish Museum. It is also a problem on the right. I mean, in addition to the Tree of Life synagogue killing in Pittsburgh, which is obviously homicidal, there's been reporting recently that the Pentagon press secretary, Kingsley Wilson, has a history of social media posts pushing anti-Semitic tropes, extremist theories. NPR reports it has identified 3 Trump officials with close ties to anti-Semitic extremists like Nick Fuentes.
Okay, I just have to stop it because you have to pay attention to the way that they speak. They have ties to Nick Fuentes. So does that definitively mean they're anti-Semitic? That's number one. Secondly, let's say whoever it was at the Pentagon who's uploading these crazy posts and these tropes or whatever they want to frame it as, let's say that's all true. Is that the same as somebody throwing Molotov cocktails at actual people who are pro-Israel while they're doing a peaceful protest? No. Is that the same thing as someone who was trying to blow up the governor of Pennsylvania? No. So I don't know why he tried to set up the question by equating those two. And then he makes himself look even stupid when he says, well, I'm not trying to, do this whole thing called whataboutism, but you are doing it, Jake.
I think, and again, the problem right now that we're seeing in terms of violence is on the left. And I want to make it clear, I'm not doing whataboutism. But it is really difficult to be a Jew in America and not see this as a bipartisan affliction.
Well, to your point right there, again, the violence right now is coming from the left, which is why we do 2 things. We empower our state and local law enforcement to work with their federal counterparts to absolutely hold accountable these violent attacks when they slip through the cracks. But more than that, we support our state and local law enforcement being able to work with the feds to prevent these things from happening in the first place. And that is very, very difficult in sanctuary states like Colorado, like California, like many other blue states around the country, where state and local law enforcement is not allowed to work with their federal counterparts to be able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to prevent things like this happening. So, to your point about the violence, we have to be able to work federal, state, and local together to stop this from happening. And then we always condemn anti-Semitic actions, words, deeds, wherever they're found, to make sure that everyone in our community knows this is not appropriate, this is not okay, and you will be called out for it. And if you ever commit a bias-motivated crime against the Jewish community, you will be held to account to the fullest extent of the law.
All right, guys, I just have to say it. Jake Tapper, he has to be morally conflicted. I mean, I would literally ask him if I ever met him, like, how do you do it? I mean, you have to have a conscience. I know you have an intuition and it's telling you what you're saying is wrong. But I think through years of that programming and the habit of framing things a certain way, it's easy for him to do it. Now, if you have a brain, you could see right through what he's saying. He's trying to equate the two so he can minimize the rhetoric that the violence is coming from the left. If he wasn't trying to minimize it, he wouldn't set up everything by saying all this right-wing stuff and, all these suggestions that people who are currently a part of the administration are anti-Semitic. He wouldn't do that. All right, and now I'm going to show you this clip from Ted Cruz. He's reacting to CNN's disgusting coverage of this terror attack, where they brought on people to criticize the FBI and the way that they handled it. And here you go.
It's hard to imagine that the FBI has more or better information at this point to kind of rush out with the conclusion within like 10 minutes after we all started hearing about this, that it's a targeted act of terror. It may very well be, but most of the time you try to be very careful about attaching that label to an attack until you have solid evidence that indicates a motive that would qualify as terrorism.
No, Senator, the fact that this guy was at such a high level at the FBI and helped lead the efforts against Donald Trump with the scam Russia investigation, and this is what he offers now?
Look, he's a left-wing radical, and he's committed to lying. We also saw the Boulder Police Department say, well, we don't know that it's terrorism. This guy was a lunatic who was at a pro-Israel protest, elderly Jewish people, including a Holocaust survivor there, calling for the release of hostages taken on October 7th, and this guy screams "Free Palestine" and lights them on fire.
And that's why Dan Bongino put this up today. To be clear, moving forward, when the evidence passed to our FBI leadership team from an active crime scene includes clear, ideologically motivated statements, video, multiple witness accounts, Molotov cocktails, and a large gatherings of like-minded people, we will investigate those incidents as targeted acts of terror. If the investigation turns in a different direction, despite the evidence, we can make adjustments. And everyone is innocent until proven guilty in our justice system. But we are the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are not the Federal Bureau of Word Games. And that's true, because that's exactly what mainstream media and Democrats are doing.
And you look at CNN, by the way, the New York Times didn't mention in their coverage this guy was an illegal immigrant. It's reminiscent. You remember the earlier terror attack in New Orleans, where this lunatic drove a truck into a crowd with an ISIS flag behind it. And what did the career FBI person there say? Well, we don't know that this is terrorism. You know what? When you fly an ISIS flag and murder people, we do know it's terrorism. It is obvious, and it's a political agenda that they don't want to acknowledge. These are radical Islamic terrorists. By the way, we've seen in the last 2 months, we've seen elderly Jewish people lit on fire by radical leftist Islamists. We've seen a beautiful young Jewish couple murdered here in Washington, D.C. simply because they're Jews. And the guy was a leftist from Chicago. He wasn't Palestinian. He was just a leftist ideologue who screamed free Palestine. And then we also saw the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, the governor's mansion firebombed with a radical that wanted to murder him and his entire family. This is a poisonous ideology, and it's one that flourished under Joe Biden and the Democrats.
Yeah, it just blows my mind why it's so hard for people to just agree on certain things. When someone is murdering American citizens, especially when they were peacefully protesting in solidarity for pro-Israeli hostages that are still stuck in Gaza, I don't think it's too much to ask to be on the same page here. It is a domestic terror attack. That's number one. Number two, this guy is a foreign national, a legal migrant, allegedly, because he overstayed his visa. And he's screaming "Free Palestine." What more do you need to know? It's just fascinating. And then even the following day, I showed you clips of what people are still saying. They're totally disconnected here. Okay, so in other news, Pride Month is here. And mainstream media is basically running stories that things have changed. That the industry, although it made a lot of money, we're talking billions of dollars, it's now losing money because nobody is really pushing it anymore. And I think for good reason. Take a look.
The multi-billion-dollar business that has become Pride morphed into Pride. Pride is now big business. Think about big pharma, big tech, big tobacco. And now you know what we've got? Big Pride. Big Pride is a billion-dollar business. Pride events, though, have seen a mass exodus of sponsors since Donald Trump was elected. San Francisco Pride, New York City Pride, Utah Pride, Virginia Pride, Columbus Pride. All the events, all the parades are all now losing money. In Montana, the governor just signed a law banning pride flags from all public school classrooms. Tim Walz put tampons in the men's room. So we've gone from insanity back to common sense. Donald Trump officially banned pride flags from all federal buildings and all U.S. embassies. That's a good thing. That's common sense. You can do it at your house. Do whatever you want.
Now, generally speaking, that is the conservative point of view on this, is that we don't need any additional flags. There's really 3 flags that should be authorized, especially at the state level: the state flag, the American flag, and the POW flag. That's it, nothing more. But when you start adding 1,000 different flags because you're trying to tailor to 1,000 different small groups, now you're starting to conflate the value of things. And now it's to a point where the fact that President Trump signed that executive order, you still have parts of this country who looks at the American flag in disgust. Let me show you an example of that. Take a look at this.
Happy Pride Month. In my Target that used to have the Pride section, it's now all USA. Yay. It's an American summer. except for tourism, because tourism's down because no one wants to come here. USA, woo! And honestly, my dad serves in the military, and I'd love to be really proud of this nation, but it's hard to be proud of it under Donald Trump. But hey, you know, while you're here, pick up a USA bikini. You know, why not? Yeah, Target's really taken this anti-DEI thing to another level.
Now, obviously, we don't know who she is, and I'm not too sure if she was trolling or not. I'm sure you guys will be able to verify that. But let's just keep it straight. Even if we go back 3 years ago, 2 years ago, under Joe Biden, I was still proud of this country. It's still the greatest country in the world, even when Democrats are in control. Now, their policies will destroy this country as we know it. I think that is true. And I think Republicans enable these policies because they don't do anything either to make their case. But the fact of the matter is, hating the American flag is as delusional as you can get. In fact, I believe it's the devil at work. How grateful is it to be in a country like this? You could have been born in North Korea. You could have been born somewhere in the Congo, but you're born in the United States of America. It doesn't get any better than that. Now, here's Mark Meadows and his take on this entire issue. Take a look.
When we look at embracing a flag, it's all about embracing the American flag. We can embrace a number of different lifestyles without actually having to celebrate it for an entire month, as you pointed out. And I'm all about lighting up the colors on the White House, but those should be red, white, and blue. As we start to look at it. And so this president has really embraced Main Street and has come along and said, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to let biological men compete in women's sports anymore. Yes. We're not going to continue to espouse those values that honestly are against the traditional American values of family, faith, and freedom.
Yep, he's spot on about that. But the real story isn't necessarily about the flags, because we know people have been losing their mind over that. It's the money, ladies and gentlemen. How many people have made money because of DEI and Pride Month and BLM, but never actually delivered results for those same groups? Even MSDNC is admitting this fact. Take a look.
I'm assuming that these companies start saying, well, we're not giving you the $100,000 we've given you in years past because we're afraid of the Trump administration. What are they saying?
I mean, what they're saying is that they're going to let their brands individually speak for itself. So take Diageo, for example, right? They're saying Smirnoff Vodka will still be a corporate sponsor at different individual events, but we're not going to cut that big check that we would normally cut for the San Francisco Pride event or for the New York City Pride event. Now, what those organizers are having to do, though, that's interesting, is actually turn to grassroots funding. They're having to actually go back to maybe what they were doing, say, a decade ago, right? You sort of saw this corporate rainbow washing, corporate commitment after 2015 with the defense of marriage, right, and in support of same-sex couples. The corporations jumped at the opportunity to get more involved. Now they're sort of having to go back to the communities and say, look, we need you to show up again for us because we're losing these corporate sponsors.
But see, that's the problem with corporate America, and why any American with a brain should discourage any time these corporations start peddling, social justice issues. They should just stay out of it. Okay, I don't go to Target or Walmart because of their political views. That's not why the company was started. It's just like I don't watch sports games to hear what your political take is on what's happening in Gaza. Like, that is the problem with our country. Politics has infected almost every single industry. You can't go anywhere without, I guess, getting hit with some political statement. We need to go back to a time where politics has its own area, sports has its own area, and when you go to the grocery store or you're going out shopping, you're not bombarded by all these woke messages. And let's not forget, again, it comes down to money, ladies and gentlemen. How much money did the Biden administration throw at corporations to push this stuff? I'm sure you could do the math on that. But first, I want to get your reaction in the comment section below to these stories that we discuss in this video. Obviously, starting with the continuous disgusting coverage from CNN as it pertains to this terror attack that happened in Boulder, Colorado yesterday. Let me know if you see the same thing. And also the update that Pride Month is not as lucrative as it was when Joe Biden was in office. Give me all your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, in earlier news today, ICE scored a huge victory after they executed one of the largest deportation operations in history. Also, CNN continues to pile on to Democrats with another bad poll. If you missed out on both of those stories, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.